Welcome to a very brief video covering cherry picking as a thinking skill, a basic thinking skill for students. And this is a thinking skill that's a very relevant one. It's probably one of the most classical thinking errors that you can find on social media, in writing, in public speaking, you name it, especially on social media. This is a very common one. So what's it about? It's very much about reinforcing an opinion. For example, in this case, do you go to the left or going to the right? And you find arguments to prove that your direction or your decision is the right one. So you can understand easily that you can make a lot of mistakes by this thinking. So it's very much about picking arguments that fit your model, your thinking, and rejecting arguments that don't fit so well in your model. And by doing so, you're saying, hey, my garden looks nice at this side of the fence. Look how green it is, how beautiful it is. And the part of the garden at your side, it's shit, it's nonsense, it's BS, it's bad. So it is very much about a polarity thinking, saying that, hey, I'm right and you're wrong. And as you can understand, this is not a very clever way of thinking. No. You find it often in politics where you do this. They say, I'm right, and the other political party is wrong, and they give arguments saying, we do this and this and this, and the other party is doing all the bad things. So it's a very polarity thinking, and it's not the best way of thinking and speaking. It's not only in politics, by the way, you find it everywhere. So it's something to keep an eye on. So, it's very much a biased way of thinking, a judgmental way of thinking. It's a bit like this young dog here. It's a bit a puppy, immature, still junior, and that's all fine. But if you stay acting like that, it doesn't come across as very professional. It's also very much about confusing opinions and facts, and don't understand there's a big difference between both of them. It's also about confusing observation or observations and interpretations. It's confusing both. An observation is a very clear, objective, while interpretation is very subjective. So, and therefore it leads to confusion. There are some better approaches out there. One is called the scientific method. And the advantage of the scientific method is you have a thesis and you have a condition in which you do the experiment, and then you prove or disprove it, and it gives you data. But the thing is, it takes time. It needs to be set up. You can often test only one parameter, very rarely more. You can find some indicators for other parameters as well, but it's getting more confusing. So it's a very delicate, very grounded approach, but it takes time, a lot of time, and it needs a lot of controls and double checks and repeats. So it's a very slow method, and often it gets rejected by the people that does this cherry picking. So because this method is actually not fitting their thinking. So another way is having balanced reporting. So we have perspective A and perspective B is looking from perspective A, but also looking at from perspective B. But also zooming out and say, what about the third person perspective? And you see A, B together at the same time. So that is a very mature way of looking at settings and situations. Very few people can do that, actually. It shows maturity and internal development and ego development and adult development that allows you doing this different way of reporting to make it more balanced. It's more popular, of course, by those that do cherry picking because it doesn't fit their way of thinking, of course. The other way is very simple, is see reality as it is. And instead of following a fantasy story, that's not true. It's about looking at the reality the way it is and also reporting it as the way it is. So that's the very relevant thing to do. Now, you can understand picking arguments that fit your model and rejecting arguments that don't fit your model. It's a very immature way of thinking and reflecting. But surprisingly, a lot of on social media, you'll find this type of thinking back. And so it's kind of amazing. If you look at it, how many posts are made and how many are fitting this cherry picking model, you'll be surprised. It's very much about cloning and fooling yourself, people that do that. It's behaving in a certain way, but actually if you look under these clothes, you find a very primitive way of reasoning. It's pretty much a delusional way of thinking. It's like describing an orange to be orange, but you instead of seeing the reality the way it is, orange, you want to paint it blue. And of course, it's a delusional way of thinking. And it happens quite often. So That completes a very brief introduction to cherry picking. It's by picking the cherry that fits you best, and that cherry, by magical way of thinking, becomes the cherry that should be considered, and rejecting everything else. So that's the expression of cherry picking. You pick the cherry you want and reject everything else, and you find arguments to prove that you are right. And of course, that's nonsense. So you got the message here. It's easy to understand. So like this video if you see this on my channel. Feel free to follow me on my YouTube channel as well, where I have other great videos to illustrate these elements for you. So all the best, and see you later for more.